So we've talked about what the investors are looking for and what drives them, what their underlying compelling issues are around their investment profiles. So now let's talk about how do you put together a pitch deck which addresses that and puts you and your company in the best possible light. Now I've been raising money for early stage companies, either my own or others, for over 15 years. And over the term of over that time frame, if I asked 10 different VCs what they wanted in the pitch deck, I'd probably get 10 different answers. They're all a little different. But regardless, there's a couple out there that I really like. One is something that Fred Wilson of Union Square Ventures talks about. He wants to keep it to no more than 6 slides. If you're only going to show 6 slides, you have to be very careful about which 6 you choose. And then Guy Kawasaki, who's very well known at Garage Ventures, he actually uses what he calls a 10-20-30 rule. It's 10 slides, you don't talk any more than 20 minutes, and you use a minimum of 30-point font. Most of these VCs are kind of like me. They've been around for a while. Their eyes are not quite as good as they used to be. So try to make your slides easy to see when you're projecting them up on a screen. Even though you may be allocated an hour at an investor meeting, you still should try to keep your presentation to a maximum of 20 minutes. And I think that's a very good piece of advice, because after 20 minutes, people tend to lose their focus, and you want to leave enough time at the end to be able to address questions that they may have. So I've put together my idea of what a perfect pitch deck is, which I'll go through in a moment. But regardless of how many slides you have, or what the title of each slide is, regardless of that, the best pitch decks tell a compelling story that's interesting to the investor and makes them want to invest in you. So you need to talk about the problem you're solving or what opportunity exists out there, how your product or solution addresses that problem. You want to show your team and what the composition of the team is and how they can work to get this problem solved through developing the product. And then have other information available, which we'll talk about in a minute what that information might be. And I believe that you should maintain your pitch deck at a maximum of 10 slides. So let's go through what I think is the best pitch deck to use. So the first 5 are maybe the first most important slides, and that is because people, as you go through your presentation, the longer you go, the less interesting they may find it, or I shouldn't say it that way, but they'll probably get to a point where they've heard enough, let's say. They've made their decision in the first couple of slides. Most of these folks will make their decision pretty early. So have a very professional looking cover, have your contact information on it, have your company byline if you have one, if you have a logo, present it in a professional manner. That shows that you've done your work, you've put a professional deck together. Then you want to talk about the market opportunity. What problem is out there that you're solving? What pain is the customer feeling? How is your product or service going to solve that problem? And then the team. I've emphasized this many times, that your team is the thing that the investor is really investing in. Yeah, they're interested in the market opportunity, and they're interested in how your product solves the problem. But their primary investment that they're looking at is, can this person and his or her team actually address the problem and get it solved? Then you can talk about your product and what it is and how it addresses your problem, and make sure that you refer it back to the opportunity or the problem that you discussed in the second slide. And then you need to have a market sizing slide. And one of the things that I always tell people is have it backed up by research, and then refine it down to a size which is the market that you really can address with your product or solution. It's easy to say the food market is a $20 billion market a year. If you're selling a product or two within that food market, then you're not addressing a $20 billion market. You're addressing whatever subset of the market is related to what you're selling. So make sure that you understand that big markets are interesting, but if you put a market slide up there that shows this gigantic market which your product does not address, that will be a red flag for the investor. Then one of the most important things that they want to hear from you is, how are you going to make money? Because at the end of the day, that's the purpose of starting a company and building your product, making money so that you can hopefully grow your business, have an exit, have an IPO. Some way you generate liquidity for the investor so they get a good return on their investment. Talk about the competition. We talked about earlier that you never say there is no competition, but you need to talk about it, address how what their strengths and weaknesses are, and be careful when you're talking about competition that you don't, what I call, knock the competition. You don't want to talk about them badly. You want to compare your product and why it's better than their product. But you never want to be negative when it comes to the competition. It makes you look bad, frankly. And then talk about, how are you going to gain your customers? What's your market penetration strategy? You've got to have one, and you've got to be able to discuss with the investor, how are you going about getting customers to buy your product? You also want to talk about what successes you've had so far, what traction you have. That might be something as wonderful as some early sales, or it might be something as simple as, I have 10 major customers in the market I'm trying to address who are doing a beta test of my product. And if you can say honestly that the customers that are beta testing your product have committed to you that if the product works well and it fits into what they're trying to solve, they'll actually convert themselves into a paying customer, that's a very positive thing for an investor to hear. So talk about your traction. Traction might also be a partnership with a major partner, a distribution partnership, or a co-branding partnership, or a white labeling partnership. Any of those things that shows that someone else, some independent third party, is interested in what you're doing and is interested enough in what you're doing to enter into a business agreement to work together. That's very positive from an investor standpoint. And then finally, you want to talk about, and save this for the end, you want to talk about how much money are you trying to raise. You need to make sure you say, I'm raising X millions of dollars or X $100,000, and here's what I'm going to do with the money. They always want to know, what do you need? How are you going to use it? So one of the things I like to do is, you should have an appendix, and that's where you can put a lot of slides that include information, like additional information that I wouldn't go through in the primary pitch, like financial projections or headcount plans or timelines. Have those slides in an appendix, and if somebody asks a question about one of those topics, then you can pull that slide up and say, okay, I happen to have a slide on that, let's talk about that. By the way, if that happens, that's a good thing, because that means they're engaged and they're interested in hearing more. Before you make a pitch to a prospective investor, you should make sure that you practice. You should talk to friends or advisors or even other VCs that you have a relationship with. Go to them and ask them to listen to your pitch, get their feedback, and incorporate that into your final pitch. You'll be much more professionally polished if you do that, and they may bring up some very interesting comments that'll help you either eliminate some inconsistencies in your deck, or they'll say, put some additional information in on this particular topic. So vet your deck before you actually pitch it. David Cowan of Bessemer Venture Partners had a really great quote, which I really like. It says, a PowerPoint either greatly increases your chance to be funded, or get a term sheet, as he put it, or the dignity of a quick no. So hopefully the PowerPoint you put together will generate a term sheet for you. But at the end of the day, a quick no from someone who's not interested is better than having them kind of drag you along, because if you're talking to someone who's not interested, that's also a waste of your time.